Thank April McCormick and the Deschamps family for allowing the video that you see behind us of pictures of Norm. And it's nice he's here with us today in spirit, and we'll be having a moment of silence later once the meeting's called to order. So Miigwech, April, and the Deschamps family. Call the meeting to order. Invocation, as always, is done by our spiritual advisor, Mr. Gene Goodsky.
good every time I did the invocation like I did now. He said that any time that you do that, that I really get a good feeling. Every time you smoke your pipe and do this whole thing. So at this time, I'm gonna ask, for a moment of silence for Norman. Good. Good. Good.
Miigwech Jean, thank you. Before we can do roll call, we need to swear in Marie Spry, Vice Chair of Grand Portage. Okay.
I noticed that's right here.
Oh, okay.
That's where I should.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Dave Morrison.
Here.
Candy Shavers.
Here.
April McCormick.
Here.
Marie Spry. Here. Sheldon Boyd.
Here.
Melanie Benjamin.
Here.
Kevin Dukas.
Excused. Excused.
Ferdinand Marno.
Here.
Terry Tibbetts.
Here.
Alan Roy.
Here.
Vern Jackson. Here. Archie LaRose.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Gary. I was going to ask for a moment of silence on behalf of the TEC, but miigwech to Jean for doing that. I just have a few words that I would like to say with regards to Norm. We've lost a great Indian leader, tribal leader, for not only the Grand Portage tribe and not only for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, but for Indian country as a whole. Norm dedicated his life to his people, our people, and other Native Americans. And I just want to say it's been an honor to serve under him, and we'll miss him very much. Miigwech. Moving on, we'll do approval of the agenda.
I do have a couple changes on the agenda. First of all, under resolutions, there's several resolutions that we will add. Under the resolutions, the 3419, the second resolution, that is going to be scratched. We don't need it, but so we're not throwing all the numbering off. We'll put one of the resolution up there, an HRA resolution. That'll be 3419. Then at the end of the resolutions, 6619 would be, Kathy will talk about that, but any program that you have Appropriation Act, sponsored by you all. 6719 will be something that's legal, we'll move up on the resolution, the Mct Land Transfer, approved in Subcommittee yesterday. And 6819 will be Veteran Service Member and Veteran Family Care.
Okay.
And that'll be 6819, that'll be the last resolution, but those will come out of legal.
Okay.
Okay. Then under tribal state relations, Tad and Linda weren't able to make it, Ed weren't able to make it, but Melly's gonna speak on that, I think there's a handout.
Okay.
Under Indigenous Peoples' Day at Capitol, I'll scratch that.
That was the Sovereignty Day
Okay.
stuff, so I think you guys were all there. So.
Okay. You want to scratch that?
So we can scratch that also. Okay, that's the additions to the, and deletion to the agenda.
Okay. Anyone else have any additions or deletions? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda with those deletions and additions. Moved by Melanie. Is there a second? Second by Farron. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. Just for everybody's information also, we are putting this meeting on YouTube today. Thanks to our Bois Forte staff for doing that. And then we also have Niji Radio here today. So, just as an FYI. Minutes, October 30, 2018 of the regular meeting, regular TEC meeting held at Northern Lights Casino in Walker. Jane, I have a question on the last page of the minutes, up at the top where it says public radio, social media, use this to get people to connect Braken versus Zinke. It's above the Tribal Executive Committee. Is that supposed to be down farther? Okay. Okay. There's no questions on the minutes or comments. I'd like to call for a motion to approve the October 30, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Just on page 4, on the
Page four.
top of the 18th minutes, they just got my position on. Chairman they got, Chairman Champ, Chairman Rose.
On the 18th minutes?
Yeah. Page 4, top page. I second it, but it says Chairman LaRose second. Right on the top.
Okay, got it.
Page 4.
Got it.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I see on that one, but.
Okay, that change. Do we have a motion to approve the October 30, 2018 meeting minutes? Moved by Marie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Archie. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. December 18, 2018 meeting minutes held at Grand Casino Hinckley. Special Tribal Executive Committee meeting.
Just on, page 3, the, second paragraph from the bottom. Texas Court Serious Attach. I think it should be attack, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. On the ICWA case?
Yes. See it. Sorry. Page 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the paragraph from the bottom. It's ludicrous. I think it's just the word and not the name of the guy.
That's a band, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good kid, Sheldon. We didn't know he was here.
Huh?
We didn't know he was here that day.
Oh.
It's kind of weird statement in minutes.
The same page. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 paragraphs down. Hello? Same page, 4 paragraphs down. So I just want to make sure I'm quoted correctly. So I said, it reads, the greatest threat to the people is their government. I'd rather suffer. The exact quote I used was, the greatest threat to the people is their own government.
Yeah.
I'd rather suffer the cold indifference of justice than pray for the benevolence of good men.
Thank you, Ellen. At the bottom of that same paragraph, I believe September
Oh,
2019 instead of 20219. It's just a typo error.
nothing else? I move to accept the minutes.
Motion made by Melanie to accept the minutes with corrections for the December 18th, 2018 special TEC meeting. Is there a second? Second by Ferdinand. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. Next, we have resolutions.
Okay, the resolution, the first resolution, which is number 3319. It's a grant application, Rural Health Network Development Planning Program in the amount of $15,000. Whereas the mission of the Human Services Division of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe is to provide a circle of quality services to elders, families, and children within the tribal community by promoting self-sufficiency through health, wellness, employment, education, cultural identity, advocacy, and training. Whereas the Minnesota Area Agency on Aging has operated as a function of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe and providing additional support for elder programming in partnership with the Department of Human Services, Minnesota Board of Aging. Whereas Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, Human Service Division, and the Minnesota Indian Area Agency on Aging were invited by the Northland Foundation to respond to the request for proposal for Rural Aging Initiative Innovation Programs grant opportunity for tribal nations. Whereas the Northland Foundation Rural Aging Initiative is designed to enhance and strengthen avenues for elders in the 7-county region of northeastern Minnesota to live full, meaningful lives with independence and dignity in their home and community. And be it resolved that the Minnesota Area Agency on Aging and its many partners will utilize this grant program opportunity to encourage and support creative and approaches to assist our elderly population to age comfortably in their home and community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Minnesota Chippewa Tribal Executive Committee approves the Human Service Division submission for a Rural Health Network Development Planning Program, United States Department of Health and Human Services grant for the amount of $15,000, hereby authorize Executive Director as designee as the signature authority, the grant submission and execution and delivery of the contract, including any amendments.
Any questions on the resolution? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve Resolution 3319 regarding grant application for Rural Health Network Development Planning Program grant.
What'd you say, 3319?
3319. Moved by Allen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Archie. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Okay, the next resolution, 3419, is the health reimbursement agreement resolution. And it is a handout that you have. Discussed at legislative subcommittee yesterday. We have our new health plan, group health plan coming into effect March 1st, 2019, and we are required to have this type of resolution as well as some attachments that I do have that the legislative subcommittee has, and I have extras if any of the TC members want any. Whereas the legislative subcommittee met on Friday, February 19th, 2019, and did recommend tribal executive committee approval, and whereas the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe's health reimbursement arrangement, also known as the plan, originally approved on March 1st, 2010, and revised March 1st, 2013, requires revision to reflect current need. Whereas the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe shall be instructed to take such actions that are deemed necessary and proper in order to implement the plan and to set up adequate accounting and administrative procedures to provide benefits under the plan. And whereas the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe shall act as soon as possible to notify the employees of the adoption of the plan by delivering to each employee a copy of the summary description of the plan in the form of the summary plan description presented to the legislative subcommittee, which form is hereby approved. Be it finally resolved that the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Tribal Executive Committee does hereby authorize Gary Fraser, Executive Director, or his designee to implement the revised Minnesota Chippewa Tribe's health reimbursement arrangement effective March 1st, 2019, in accordance with Exhibits A and B attached hereto.
Okay, do we have a motion, or is there questions on the resolution? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve Resolution 3419 with regards to the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe's health reimbursement arrangement. Moved by Marie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by April. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Okay, the next resolution is 3519 concerning enrollment. It's in the book. First one is the Bois eligibles.
Motion to approve made by David. Is there a second? Second by Ferd. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 3619, Bois ineligibles.
Moved by David, seconded by Ferd. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 3719, White Earth eligibles.
Moved by Terry, seconded by Allen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 3819, White Earth ineligibles.
Moved by Terry, seconded by Allen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 3919, White Earth transfer to Leech Lake.
Moved by Terry, seconded by Allen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4019, White Earth transfer to Bois Forte.
Motion by Terry, second by Allen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 4119, White Earth relinquished to Choctaw Nation.
Moved by Terry, second by Allen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4219, White Earth blood relinquished to First Nation.
Motion by Terry, second by Allen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4319, white earth blood degree change.
Motion by Terry. Second by Allen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4419, white earth no parent enrolled.
Motion by Terry. Second by Allen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4519, Leech Lake eligibles.
Moved by Farron.
Second.
Second by Archie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4619, Leech Lake ineligibles.
Moved by Farron.
Second.
Second by Archie. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 4719, Leech Lake relinquished from Red Lake.
Moved by Farron, second by Archie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4819, Leech Lake relinquished from Sitson Wapton.
Moved by Farron,
Second.
second by Archie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 4919, Leech Lake blood degree change.
Moved by Farron,
Second.
second by Archie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 5019, Leech Lake no parent enrolled.
Moved by Farron,
Second.
second by Archie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 5119, Fond du Lac eligibles.
Moved by Ferd, second by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 5219, Fond du Lac ineligibles.
Moved by Ferd, second by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 5319, Fond du Lac base roll correction.
Moved by Ferd,
Second.
second by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 5419, Fond du Lac blood degree change.
Moved by Ferd, second by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 5519, Fond du Lac no parent enrolled.
Moved by Ferd,
Second.
second by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 5619, Grand Portage eligibles.
Moved by Marie, second by April. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 5719, Grand Portage ineligibles.
Moved by Marie, second by April. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution 5819, Mille Lacs eligibles.
Moved by Melanie, second by Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 5919, Mille Lacs ineligibles.
Moved by Melanie, second by Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Resolution number 6019, Mille Lacs no parent enrolled.
Moved by Melanie, second by Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Okay, that's all the enrollment resolutions. Next resolution is in the packet, 6119. It's a resolution regarding state of Minnesota DHS grant for substance use disorder training in the amount of $60,000.
Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 6119 for the submission of a proposal to receive a grant for $60,000 from the Minnesota Department of Human Services? Moved by Marie. Is there a second? Second by Farron. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Next resolution is Resolution 6219, titled Tribal Adoption Parity Act. We discussed this yesterday at legislative. It passed there. Would you like me to read?
Could you read it,
Okay.
please, Phil?
Thank you. And this was provided to us after some of our TC members went to Washington and spoke with members of Congress. Currently, there's an act pending that they would like as much tribal support on as possible. The way we drafted this resolution, it largely follows the NCAI resolution that was enacted when this was previously introduced. The mission of the Human Services Division of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe is to provide a circle of quality. I'll skip those introductory ones, actually. Okay. Whereas Tribal Adoption Parity Act is legislation that would bring parity to tribal governments for the adoption tax credit. This legislation would make the special needs adoption tax credit available to all adoptive parents who adopt children through tribal courts. And whereas the legislative is supported by the Child Welfare League of America, the National Congress of American Indians, the National Indian Child Welfare Association. And whereas the bill amends Section 23 of the Internal Revenue Code by adding Indian tribal governments to the adoption tax credit. And whereas the legislation would bring parity between the states and tribes when seeking adoptive homes for children with special needs. And whereas tribal governments would then be able to designate adoptive children as having special needs, a determination that would entitle the adoptive parents to qualify for the full adoption tax credit. Be it further and finally resolved that the Minnesota Chippewa Tribal Executive Committee does hereby support the reintroduction of the Tribal Adoption Parity Act.
What is that amount, Philip, for,
So I think the tax credit, the last time it went around, was $10,000. Right now, if the adoption is processed through tribal courts, the IRS won't
recognize?
give full faith and credit to the tribal court adoption of that child being special needs. So therefore, the tax credit doesn't automatically apply. This act would include tribal governments into the list of jurisdictions in which those special needs determinations are deemed valid.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve Resolution 6219. Who's that? Marie? Motion by Marie. Is there a second? Second by Terry. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Okay, next resolution is one of your handouts. It's concerning Norm Deschamps Day proclamation. I reported at committee yesterday that also on the 26th of February, during a legislative dinner, the governor is going to address the whole audience at legislative dinner, and he's proclaiming the 26th as being the Norman Deschamps Day for the state of Minnesota also.
Can you read it, please, Norm? Or, Gary?
Did you say read the resolution?
Yes, please.
Okay. Whereas the Grand Portage Band of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe has for centuries had its homeland at the international border in northern Minnesota, and whereas since 1974, Norman Deschamps was an elected official of the governing body of the Grand Portage Band, serving 4 years as a tribal council member, 14 as secretary treasurer, and since 1992 as chairman. And whereas Norman Deschamps earned the respect of his fellow tribal leaders and served for 22 years as president of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe and 6 years as vice president. And whereas Norman Deschamps dedicated his life to improving the lives of the people of Grand Portage through programs supporting education, health, and economic development. And whereas Norman Deschamps promoted the understanding of traditions and customs of the Grand Portage Band and its stewardship of natural resources essential to the culture of the Chippewa. And whereas Norman Deschamps forged relationships with other Indian tribes and organizations, local communities, the state of Minnesota, and the United States that strengthened the band's ability to influence the use and conservation of natural resources both on and off the Grand Portage Reservation. And whereas the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe acknowledges the contributions and legacy of this elected leader who has had a lifelong impact on the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. Now therefore be it resolved that the Minnesota Chippewa Tribal Executive Committee does hereby declare Tuesday, February 26, 2019 as Norman W. Deschamps Day.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Melanie, second by Ferdinand. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, silent, motion carried.
The next resolution is a handout. We discussed it yesterday. It'll be titled Resolution 6419, titled Resolution Inviting Tribal Liaison to Attend TEC Meetings. This came up at the Natural Resources Subcommittee. It's a good idea. I think the idea would be to pass this resolution and then send a cover letter on to the governor attaching the resolution. I'll read the resolution now. The Tribal Executive Committee recognizes and appreciates the dedication of Governor Tim Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan to ensuring that Native nations are treated with dignity and that tribal sovereignty is truly honored. And whereas the Tribal Executive Committee looks forward to working closely with the Governor's office to address the many issues that face our governments and members. And whereas in furtherance of our continued relationship with the Governor's office, the Tribal Executive Committee extends an invitation to the Governor's tribal liaison, when such person is appointed, to attend our quarterly meetings to ensure that the Governor is aware of issues that our tribal governments and members are facing. And now therefore be it resolved that the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Tribal Executive Committee extends an invitation to the Governor's tribal liaison when such person is appointed to attend our quarterly meetings.
Melanie, could you explain to the audience what we found out on Sovereignty Day from the governor with regards to this position?
Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan was at the Sovereignty Day session down at the House of Representatives in St. Paul this past week. And when she did her welcome or her address to the body, one of the things she stated is that they have created a new position, and it is a tribal liaison for the office of the governor and the lieutenant governor. And it's open for people that are interested, so I think it's through the normal way that they post and look at positions through the state system. And at the natural resource meeting, we were talking about the Wild Rice Task Force of the topic, and it was thought that it would be very beneficial if the governor's office had a representative at our meetings, so that when we had issues, questions, or concerns, that it would be faster to get those issues addressed through that office. And so the discussion started with that, to when that tribal liaison is hired, that they attend our MCT meetings. Just better communication and making sure that we keep that line of communication open.
Make which, Melanie. Any questions? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve Resolution 6419. Moved by Melanie. Is there a second? Seconded by Sheldon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Okay, the next resolution is a handout. It'll be titled Resolution Number 6519. And Billy brought this to me, I believe he was talking about a subcommittee yesterday. It's supporting the reporting structure of the Office of Indian Education. Whereas the Tribal Executive Committee Resolution 11611 recommended the reestablishment of the Indian Education Director position within the Minnesota Department of Education for the purpose of overseeing the delivery of educational services and funds to Indian education programs and services. And whereas the Office of Indian Education Director has reported to the Minnesota Department of Education Commissioner since it was reestablished. Now therefore be resolved that the Tribal Executive Committee recommends the Office of Indian Education Director continue to report directly to the Minnesota Department of Education Commissioner.
I had the opportunity to sit in on the Human Services Education Subcommittee meeting, and I really would like the tribal leaders and tribes to really pay attention to the education department, because the numbers that are coming out are not great for Native people through the new reporting system. And Jane will be getting her report out shortly to the tribes with regards to the status or the where the Indian education is at the state for Native Americans, and it's not looking very good. So I think that's something that we really need to look at. We want to reaffirm that this office is in the state. Right now, we don't know if it is, but that's why we asked to bring this forward to reaffirm that we do need this position and that it report directly to the commissioner. Do we have any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve resolution, is it 6519? 6519. Moved by Farren. Is there a second? Seconded by Marie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, silent, motion carried.
Okay, after we get the resolution signed, Billy will prepare a cover letter and send it to the state. We'll send copies to the reservations too.
Okay.
Okay, the next resolution, we titled 6619, but there's no handout.
Yeah.
Kathy brought this to me as something that she just got prior to the meeting. It's concerning Indian Programs Advanced Appropriation Act. Like I said, sponsored by UDAL.
Yep.
You want to add anything, Kathy?
Last week or the week prior, we had Forte had the opportunity to go out to Washington, D.C., and we met with Senator Tina Smith. And at that time, due to the government shutdown, Senator Udall and Tina Smith and some other bipartisan senators have introduced a bill called the Indian Programs Advance Appropriations Act, and it's led by Senate Indian Affairs Committee Vice Chair Tom Udall. This would authorize advanced resources for programs and services within the IHS and BIA, and it would be implemented, if passed, in 2020. So in the event of a government shutdown, what this bill would do is authorize funding for IHS and BIA. It won't be held up. Right now, it's considered discretionary, and therefore, once the government shutdown happens, the funds stop. This would eliminate that from happening and allow tribes to have the funding necessary. As we know, the BIA and IHS are our two main funding mechanisms for the tribal government. So when we met with Senator Smith, she said any support from tribes, any letters of support or any resolutions would be very helpful in getting this bill passed. And I really feel it's needed because we felt the ripple effect of the government shutdown in many ways, not just here, but throughout Indian country. So I think the more we can support this, the better, and it does have bipartisan support. So do we have a motion to approve our resolution in support? Moved by Melanie. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by April. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. Thank you.
Just another letter that we'll get a letter for your signature, Kathy.
Okay.
Moving on to the two issues in the legal update, if you turn to that part, there's two resolutions in there that we're seeking support of. The first relates to the Mct Land Transfer. So in December, we had a meeting with the Regional Director, Tim LaPointe, to discuss administratively handling the land transfer. The administrative route is still ongoing, but we also thought we should have a two-pronged attack and also have legislation that we can start circulating amongst our friends in Congress. So that's what we did. The resolution has an attachment, and I included a handout that has the most recent language. What we did is we circulated the language that was drafted previously and got input from the legal counsels that we know that are representing your individual bands. So there's an inclusion of a new subpart D on the new handout that relates to land description review. So this resolution was drafted as kind of a follow-up to the resolution in 2018. The TEC adopted a resolution in 2018 supporting moving forward with legislation or the administrative route to seeking transfer of MCT lands back to the bands. This would be a formal adoption of language that we can start circulating and really hit the ground running on the legislative part. So this is titled Resolution 6719, approval of language for Mct Land Transfer. Whereas pursuant to the terms of the Act of January 14th, 1889, the band's treaty reservations were ceded and opened for allotment, sale, and entry under the supervision of the Secretary of Interior. And whereas in the Secretarial Order of Restoration dated February 23rd, 1938, the Secretary of the Interior determined that the remaining undisposed of and vacant lands on the reservations would be of value to the Indians and restored to tribal ownership, and where practicable, consolidated by exchange with other landowners. And whereas the Order of Restoration restored vacant and undisposed lands to tribal ownership for the use and benefit of the Chippewa Indians of Minnesota, and the United States government ruled that the restored lands were to be held in for the common benefit of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, even though the lands were within reservations which, by treaty, were intended for the perpetual use and occupancy of the specific bands which had been party to the treaties of cession. Whereas the Minnesota Chippewa tribe also purchased land from time to time within the reservations of the constituent bands, and beneficial title to those lands is held by the United States in trust for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. And whereas the lands held in trust by the United States for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe on the 6 reservations are subject to the land ordinance that delegates authority to the respective band governing bodies to manage, lease, and deal with Minnesota Chippewa trust lands in their respective reservations. And whereas although the delegations in the land ordinance have enabled the bands to exercise the attributes of ownership to the considerable extent, the ability of the bands to do so on a long-term basis is inhibited by the fact that both the land ordinance and the existing formula for allocation of proceeds for MCT trust lands can be either modified or repealed by the Tribal Executive Committee. And whereas in Resolution 3318, the Tribal Executive Committee found that band ownership of trust lands within reservations of the constituent bands would both eliminate uncertainty associated with MCT ownership and enable the fulfillment of treaty promises that were premised on reservations for the use and benefit of the bands. Whereas Resolution 3318 stated that in order for the constituent band to realize the full benefit of the tribal trust land within their reservation in perpetuity, the Tribal Executive Committee will take such action as may be necessary, including seeking and supporting federal legislation to transfer beneficial title to all lands that are held in trust for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, and either located within a reservation created for the use and benefit of the constituent band, or our Indian country over which a constituent band exercises jurisdiction to the United States of America in trust for that band. And whereas the Tribal Executive Committee finds that it is necessary to approve language that shall serve as the basis for seeking and supporting legislation transferring beneficial title to lands that are held in trust for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe or Indian country over which a constituent band exercises jurisdiction to the United States in trust for that band. Now therefore be it resolved that the Tribal Executive Committee hereby approves the legislative language attached to this resolution and authorizes the distribution and use of the language to seek and support legislation transferring beneficial title to lands that are held in trust for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe or Indian country over which a constituent band exercises jurisdiction to the United States in trust for the band. In your handout is the actual bill language. Pretty straightforward.
Any questions? I know that when we were out at DC, we did meet with Stauber's office, Congressman Stauber, and he is willing to take the bill. And then also we did meet with Betty McCullum's staff, and it looks pretty favorable there also. So we're pretty well set up to move this forward. Call for a motion to approve a Resolution 6719. Moved by Farron. Second by Terry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
So then going forward, we should get a conference call together with your legal teams and lobbyists as
Yep.
well as the TEC to figure out a plan for how we want to approach it. We know that you guys have lobbyists on your payroll who are, do this all the time, so we'll lean on them heavily.
Okay.
hopefully.
We can do that, Phil.
The next one is a resolution directing development of employee policy related to veterans. Secretary Treasurer Roy brought an example from the White Earth Tribe last TEC meeting of a resolution that they passed that was focused on providing for veterans. We discussed this yesterday at Legislative Subcommittee. I think the real brunt of what was discussed yesterday is that as tribal governments with long histories of veterans serving in the military, we need to take care of our veterans
Yep.
at least as well as other places are. So the language in this resolution would adopt or call for the creation of employee policies that adopt some of the universal things in the state of Minnesota as well as from the federal government. I'll just go through quickly and read the resolution, and then if Secretary Treasurer Roy wants to add some, he's the one who championed this in White Earth
Yep.
and also brought it to our attention. So,
Madam President,
Yes?
is it okay if we have one of our veterans in the audience read the resolution?
Sure.
Do we have a veteran in the audience that's willing to read this resolution? George?
Thank you, Alan.
Morning, Madam President and members of the Tribal Executive Committee, and Secretary Treasurer Roy. It's really an honor, and I applaud your efforts to take care of us veterans. It means a lot to a lot of us. I know that. So, miigwech. Whereas the Minnesota Chippewa Tribal Executive Committee is the duly elected governing body of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, comprised of 6-member reservations: Bois, Forte, Fond du Lac, Grand Portage, Leech Lake, Mille Lacs, and White Earth. Whereas we recognize our veterans as resilient, focused, disciplined, and caring members of our communities who encapsulate our 7 grandfather teachings: respect, truth, honesty, humility, bravery, love, wisdom, and express our deepest gratitude to our veterans and their families for their sacrifices. And the Tribal Executive Committee willingly acknowledges that the American Indians serve in the armed forces at a higher per capita rate than all other groups in the United States of America. And whereas the Tribal Executive Committee takes great pride in honoring our veterans, and we recognize our brave men and women who have sacrificed through their service so that others may realize a life of freedom. And whereas White Earth recently enacted a resolution that establishes comprehensive standards related to employment services and benefits for veterans, service members, and families. And whereas the Tribal Executive Committee finds that it is in the best interest of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe to adopt similar provisions related to employment services and benefits for veterans, service members, and families. Therefore, be it resolved that the Tribal Executive Committee instructs the staff of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe to develop employment policies related to veterans, service members, and families that include the following principles: military leave, return to employment after active duty, service-connected disability leave, veteran preference and benefits, special disabled veteran hiring authority, individual unemployability and veteran spouse interviews, active duty status and service member spouse interviews, Purple Heart or Medal of Honor citations, calculation of hiring points, and Indian preference. Be it finally resolved that the Tribal Executive Committee is committed to improving the quality of life for our veterans and their families, is committed to the promotion of our veterans in a positive image, is committed to assisting our veterans in healing from any military trauma, and will continue to promote the self-respect, self-confidence, and usefulness of our veterans.
Miigwech, George. Alan?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, George, and thank you for your service. I know we do have Raymond Aganash, who's a veteran here as well. Are there any other veterans in the room? Thank you. Thank you all for your service. When we first started this resolution, we sat down in White Earth and we wanted to figure out how we can better serve our veterans. I worked in the state of Minnesota with the Disabled Veteran Outreach Program to serve our veterans wherever they're located, and I saw there was a gap in policy and support at the tribal level. Certainly there's programs and support at state level, county, and federal level, and I just asked myself, I said, well, what are we doing for our veterans at our level, in our communities? And to me, these policies reflect a lot of gratitude for your service and your sacrifice and the sacrifices of your families. That's why we've included provisions in there to help take care of your families as well. Spouses and children are often forgotten. When we speak of veterans, we know that those that serve, we know that we fight as a family and we fight as a unit, and a veteran is only as good as his support network or her support network. So there's also my hope, Madam President, is that down the road we could revisit this resolution, our policy set, annually. That way we can make changes, because I know no policy is going to be perfect, and that we should be able to change with the times. A good example of that is inclusion of provision down the road for our veterans that were killed in action, our veterans that are missing in action, our veterans that are may have a POW status. Also provision for veteran families surviving veteran suicide. If our some of our veterans have been lost to suicide, some of these employment benefits would be extended to their children and to their spouses. I'm truly honored that the TEC has taken this on. It is it feels good. Thank you.
Miigwech to you, Alan, too, for bringing that forward. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 6819? Moved by Alan, seconded by Terry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Okay, that's it for
Okay.
resolutions.
Quarterly reports. Joe?
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the TEC, this is the administrative report. First quarter of fiscal year 2019, we enrolled 131 new tribal members, and their enrollment status, enrollment numbers, everything that goes along with establishing their profile was done for the members that were approved at the October 30th, 2018 TEC meeting. We submitted our FY 2018 annual narrative report for tribal operations under our contract to the Bureau of Indian Affairs Contracting Officer and the Minnesota Agency Superintendent on November 15th, 2018. Our tribal member database, Progeny, we will be upgrading new software, a new version of that. Each of the 6 reservation enrollment offices have purchased their software. We have as well. And then we also, what we're waiting for right now is we're going to require a little more capacity in our server. So we are in the process of purchasing additional software for that. So we should have that hopefully up and running in March of this spring. And also we will be providing training at MCT headquarters remotely from the company that produces or that manages that database. 2,714 individual documents have been prepared and scanned into individual member profiles. This could be anything from a birth record, any death certificates, or any information related to that profile. Under the title reconciliation project, we have staff at the Bureau of Indian Affairs that are reconciling title tracts. There are, as of December 31st, 943 total tracts have been reconciled, and 218 remain to be reconciled. They're primarily focusing on Fond du Lac and Bois Forte tracts as the land consolidation project is upcoming. You'll see the numbers on page 2 there. You'll see how many tracts by reservation have been completed and what's remaining. Also on page 2 is the start of our workload statistics. You'll see that continues on through page 3. The amount of work that our staff has performed. Number of data requests received and produced. You'll see at the bottom of page 3. This has to do with enrollment information. Various types of reports are requested for programs all across 6 reservations, whether it's for grants or for elections or for specific elder programs we produce for them. On page 4 is the acceptance, denial, ban, transfer, relinquishment letters we sent from the actions that were taken at the last TC meeting. The number of eligibles and the total of ineligible letters sent. The number of relinquishments, ban transfers, etc. And then attachment A is the MCT membership data. The number of members per reservation for the months of October, November, and December 2018. In addition, you have a handout from today that shows the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe enrollment statistics for the last 18 years by year, dating back to 2001. That's just for your information. That was produced by one of my staff, and it had been requested at some point in time, I believe at one of the prior TC meetings. So we're going to keep this continuously updated, and this is just for your information. We'll also share that with the enrollment staff of each of the reservations. Also included in the report, as you'll see, is the management team meeting. And this was done during the shutdown of the federal government. So our management team met in January, and these are the notes from that meeting and the impact that the shutdown would have. Of course, that shutdown has been averted now. But at least this provides you with some of the information on what we went through and the communication that we've had with our funders, with the state of Minnesota and a lot of our programs, and the impact that it would have if it continued any further at that time. So with that, if there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Joe? Alan?
Thank you, Madam President. Joe, looking at your 2001 to 2018 Minnesota Chippewa Tribe enrollment statistics, I thank you for this breakdown. We can see a progression of our enrollment status. I do have 2 specific questions, Madam President, for the next meeting if possible. So this allows, this shows us a trend of our enrollment status by bands, and it provides an aggregate number. However, number 1, while looking at this information, number 1, I'd like to know the transfer statistics.
Oh.
Specifically, Part A, 1A would be among the bands or between the bands. And Part B of number 1 would be out of the tribe by band.
Okay.
So, and then the second specific request I have, Madam President,
Yes.
is a breakdown of deceased by band, so I can have a better understanding of how our numbers are fluctuating among the bands.
Okay.
Thank you.
That can be
do
done.
that. And just a quick summary of that. We do have those statistics, and that's how that fluctuates depending on when, for example, when a death is reported to us. We also work with the Bureau on their death reports and the information that they receive and the band transfer, so yes, we can do that for you.
Okay. Any other questions for Joe?
I have one.
Go ahead, April.
Just a clarifying question for Alan. Do you want those statistics for the whole period, or you want to go back 4 years, or, you know?
From
it's a lot of
2001 to 2018.
Okay.
That's a good clarifying question.
Thank you, April. No other questions for Joe? Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve Joe's report? Moved by Farron, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, silent, motion carried. Who's next? George? Who's next, Gary? George? George? Good morning, George.
Good morning again, Madam President, members of the Tribal Executive Committee. I will be real brief. I handed out a verbal report that I was going to provide at the last meeting. On the back, you'll see something about the government shutdown, so if you want to just disregard that. But I want to really bring to your attention the activities of the Minnesota Indian Area on Aging, and what I provided you was a breakdown of the budget that we currently work under or work off, and the breakdown for the type of services, 3B, or 3A, 3B, 3C. There's 2 3Cs, which are about the meals, congregate and home delivered. And then it's a smaller amounts for disease prevention, health promotions, caregiver support. NSEP is a federally funded support program that's provided to Area Agency on Aging, and then of course state nutrition dollars. And you can see the bulk of the resource go to the congregate meal program. And those provide services to our elder population on the 4 reservations that we have listed in our area plan. And the reason why I bring this to your attention today is because, you know, the Board of Aging is really tightening their and I'm going to use the word noose on us. They are forcing us in a direction that we are not accustomed to. And it's coming through, I think, through the Aging Services Division. And I'm not real sure, you know, that is to the reasons why, but I do understand that our explanation, the explanation that they're providing us is that it's as a result of the Old Americans Act, Titles III and Title VI, and the requirements that we have to meet according to that. But I do understand that we operate much different from any other AAA program in the whole state. From a cultural standpoint, it's different. There's no question about it, and we've tried to explain that to this on that level, and we just don't seem to be getting anywhere with that. So, like yesterday in the Human Services and Education Subcommittee, I asked the committee to support our efforts as we would like to have an increase in funding be allocated, not directly from the Older Americans Act, but in the spirit of the treaties, that the state find a way to allocate resources or funding to our program so that we continue to meet the needs of our elder population in our communities. And as you can see, I handed out another handout to you, and it's a breakdown of those meals, and you can see that there has been an increase in home delivered meals. More of our elders are opting to stay home and have that meal delivered to them. And it's kind of a trend that we're starting to see with our elder population. So a lot of the services are really centered around that, about bringing things into their communities. And one of the things that we have found out is that the elders are more likely to be open to somebody who looks like them, who they know, than to have somebody from the outside who is non-native come in and try to present something to them. We're seeing that in every community that we go to, but yet when we try to explain that, it seems like it's difficult for them to understand. Even if we bring an evaluator in to our meetings so that they can see, all of a sudden those elders stop talking. So we're trying to explain what's going on in these communities, and we're really having a difficult time. And you know, again, we understand there are certain criteria that we have to meet. We have to follow the guidelines of the Older Americans Act. But we also understand that there is some flexibility on that level. And I think really should, I think if there's an opportunity that, you know, we could get some support from this body through the office of the Aging Division, but also all the way up to the governor's office. I think we could operate in the manner that we have been for the last, since 1980, we've been in existence. And now we're being asked to change the way we do things. And so that's really a difficult thing. Quickly move on to the back side of the page, and it's about employment numbers, what our employment specialists are doing. And you can see the breakdown of the counties. I wanted to share that with you. You can see the caseload, the breakdown of the caseload. Our highest numbers are in St. Louis and Cook counties in the eastern portion, northeastern portion of the state. And you can see our numbers are kind of starting to go down over in the headquarters area around Beltrami County, Cass County. And that has, you know, there's different factors that are driving that. But I wanted to make sure that I provided some numbers so you can see exactly how and the importance of this service. And there's so many different services that are provided to people who have these great needs, and they do. They demonstrate a great need. You know, nobody's choosing to be on these programs, and nobody's, you know, choosing to struggle with being underemployed or not being employable at all. There are certain criteria, and even goes as far as mental health. You know, this is a great service that is provided to the people that are on these programs, and they come from all of your communities as well. So I'm going to keep my report very short, but if there's any questions about any of these numbers, anything that I did hand out, certainly we'll be able to answer those. Miigwech, Madam President, members of the TBC.
Thank you, George.
George, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, our elders, you know, they're very important to all our communities, just like the veterans, you know, and, you know, we gotta, you know, we're in the baby boomer area now, you know, we're gonna have a little more elders coming in the elder status in 2019, 2020, and all the way through, you know, we're gonna have more elders coming in, you know, so obviously we're gonna need more dollars coming in to provide services to them, you know, and so we have to kind of really be active in, you know, reaching out for them kinds of dollars that can provide these services. I know some of the members were kind of a little upset when the MCT kind of closed down their little building over there and their meals and their gathering, and we definitely don't want to see our elders kind of silo themselves off and start a trend that's gonna keep them at home when we're a kind of a socializing type culture, you know, where we come together, you know, so we don't wanna, we wanna continue to kind of keep focusing and practicing our traditional and our cultural ways, you know, that signifies who we are as natives. So, you know, it's kind of alarming when you say a lot of the elders are kind of wanting to stay home, they don't want to socialize or gather for whatever reason, but so we got to kind of get a little bit more active with our elder programs in our communities and let them know, hey, you know, we don't want to, well, we're not going to accept this. We're not going to have you eating at home, sitting at home eating alone, when you can come and you can visit with your relatives and your community people. You know, we got to kind of find a way to kind of encourage our community members, the elders, to come back and socialize. So that's what I kind of, you know, you're right, though, it's always a money thing, it always comes down to this or that, but I think the tribes would be willing to kind of put a donation in there to kind of get that building up and running again, and to be able to do something there for the elders, because we have a lot of MCT members that reside around the Cass Lake area that would still like to gather.
Just to add on the Leech Lake level, George, we do have a few events for the elders, and we have really, really good turnouts, you know, high number turnouts of our elders. They really enjoy going to these events, socializing, laughing, dancing, you know, it's really good. Feeding them good, you know, so it's, you know, we need to try to pick that up a little more too on all ends, not just our end, but the MCT and stuff too, because we do have a lot of White Earth enrollees, other band members that are with the Minnesota tribe that live right in Cass Lake Bena area, and they enjoy our events, you know. Yeah.
Just like Archie's touching on, you know, we had our Christmas party for the elders at Northern Lights, and it was just packed, you know. Everybody had a good time, like Archie said, you know. People were seeing friends they haven't seen since the previous year because of transportation. We had a bus bring down some elders, and everybody enjoyed themselves, and they always looking forward to doing it next year again too, you know. And so it's that inclusiveness of coming together, you know, not, you know, socializing, breaking bread together, not just kind of gathering for a wake or a funeral, but on good times too as well.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman and Secretary Treasurer. The Minnesota Indian Area Aids on Aging, you know, supports those events, and they participate in some level and capacity. You know, it might be a small donation of what we can provide, you know, from money, from our fundraising activities. And again, I think you both hit on something that's really important, because Leech Lake is home to elders from, I think, every reservation. And I can go around to different communities, and I can point out, you know, there are some that, like say Inger, there's some from Fond du Lac, there are some from Bois Forte, and they're enrolled in all the reservations. So it is, and I think what Leech Lake does is really providing them that opportunity, because nobody is shut out from these big events. There's over 300 elders at these events every time that you guys host them, like at the Northern Lights. And then we have Dancing Down Memory Lane coming up, and that's another big event where we invite elders from all over. So, you know, again, and I think getting back to the elder meals, I think there's one factor that comes into play, and it's transportation. Back in the early mid-90s, I used to volunteer drive for the ENP program, and I drove that bus around the community and picked up elders and brought them to the meal place. And I would go and sit with them, help them out, and then I would drive them all back home. Or I would also deliver meals to some of the homebound people at that time. So there was less homebound people back in the 90s than there are now. And that's the trend that we're starting to see. And so I don't know if it's transportation. We kind of have a really good idea. So what we did was we actually signed a transportation contract with Leech Lake to provide some of that service to some of these elders. And it's the same thing that we could do with any one of the other member tribes that are under our plan, that we could partner with you to create a transportation program that brings elders into the, you know, to the place where you're serving those meals. And, you know, the breakdown for White Earth, they've got several areas, and they're actually the largest participant of the home and congregate meal program. So as our numbers go up, the numbers from the federal government through the Older Americans Act do not really reflect that increase. There are small increases, but that always hinges on what we provide, and what they do is identify the different units. And yesterday I talked about how one of our employees, Drew Annette, she provides that information to the state, so the state can provide that to the federal government. And you know, so we're pretty up to date, we're pretty accurate. We've seen some increases, and then we've seen some trends where they go down. And there's different types, there's different seasons of the year where the elders are not participating. And one of them we saw was last summer in July. I think we saw the numbers in participation probably drop. That's probably because, you know, there was a lot of activity going on. There was a lot of things that the elders were participating outside of that activity. But then they pick back up again in the fall, in the winter time. So we wanted to show you the numbers because we know that the state or anybody that we ask for funding is going to say, well, we want numbers. We want to see what's really going on. So this is, I told the state what we were going to do, and they wanted to make sure that if there's something that we move forward with as a body, as the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, that they are in a position to where they support our efforts. So if we went to the governor's office and asked for a funding source to be continuous for a number of years, they would be in a position to support us.
Melanie?
George, I just have a couple of questions in your job counselor caseload, and you just have just a snapshot of what those numbers are. Do you have other numbers for a couple of years back? It would be curious to see the trend, and
Yeah.
like you said, the seasonal timeframes are different based on what's going on in the community. So that would be helpful as well. And also your grant writing activity, and I know that's easier said than done, because I can't think of all the grants that are posted, I've never seen anything that has an elder focus on it. So that must be very difficult in terms of trying to secure other funding sources for the program. And the other thing, Madam Chair, that I wanted to propose is that if you have some time in your schedule maybe we could set up a meeting with the executive director on the Minnesota Board on Aging. And, because I know the trend there has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years, where you have now the board members bringing up the differences in the different cultures that they serve.
Okay.
So it's a positive kind of discussion that goes on. And of course, we all know the money is very short. And the other thing with I was just thinking about is the governor's budget. He submitted that yesterday.
Yes.
So that means now we have to look at the upcoming year to maybe, or some special appropriation, if we can get something moving forward with that. And we have to remember the president of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe has a direct into that office. So I think we might see a lot of positive changes. And the elders are something that we should really pay attention to. And we're fortunate at Mille Lacs that we're able to do a lot of kind of support services for them. And we'll continue that in a sense, but I know it's difficult when you have large populations as well. So hopefully we can be of some support in some manner too. So it'd be nice to just sit down and talk about things and kind of get that organized as well. Because I was really disappointed when the program ended, because I thought, what a great that adult daycare, that was just just pretty cool and a good opportunity, but now they don't have that opportunity. So hopefully if we can assist in some manner, you would take the time and come and visit with us. Miigwech.
Miigwech Chief Executive Benjamin, and I think just if I could answer the question about the numbers, we can actually go back and we can see if there's a trend from the past, and we'll provide that. I'll make sure that I can show you numbers that are reflective of the past years, so that we can update that. And lastly, I did get a chance to talk to Representative John Purcell prior to him being sworn in, and he wants to take a look at our area plan. He also wants to look at the resources that we have available, and we are going to lobby heavily next week at the legislative dinner, to those who might be interested in carrying a bill that would support this. So just kind of giving you a heads up of what our intentions are and what our plans are for that evening, and working those legislators over. So, miigwech.
Thank you, George. Melanie, if you would I would be willing to meet with the executive director for the Minnesota Board on Aging. I also did apply to be on the Board of Aging months ago, and have not heard anything. And the other thing that bothered me a little bit yesterday in the Human Services Education Subcommittee meeting is there's funding going to the counties for the elders, and we're not getting access to that funding. And they also access Cargill. And so I think that when we go to the legislature dinner next week, that any funding going to the counties needs to come to the tribes too. So, that's one thing we mentioned down at the Sovereignty Day, that we need to be included with counties. So I'm not going to get going on that. But do we have a motion? Go ahead, Alan.
I just have one comment,
Yes.
Madam President. George, and I don't know if we have this on file somewhere at the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe, but I do know at White Earth, where I'm engaging in discussion with some of our elders there, and it's going to be kind of like what we did with the vets resolution, working on a elder and elder family care resolution that calls for an annual consultation and coordination with our elders, our tribal elders. Ideally, what we're aiming for is having a summit with our tribal elders over a few days, and also that summit would be in coordination and consultation with our programs on White Earth. So we put our elders and our programs together, tribal leaders as well as their families, so that we can better coordinate the services that are being provided for our elders. Now, for example, this would include like annual events, planning out everything out a year in
That's a good
advance
idea.
for all our events, better tweaking our services, our trips, our if there's any adjustments, and the president had mentioned some legislation. So I think ultimately what we're aiming for is more advocacy for our elders, and to provide them with a formal mechanism for a voice. And I know that they do that naturally, but for me, what I've seen is if there's a more coordinated effort between the band and our elders, it's gonna yield better results. And so I'm putting together a elder and elder family care resolution. And when I would like to sit down with you and consult with you and get your ideas on it. And hopefully one day, if we can get it passed in White Earth, maybe we could do something here at the MCT.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yep, Secretary Treasurer Roy. Yesterday, I'm not sure if you were in the room or not, but the issue, one of the state employees brought up 1013, the executive order. And so I made a point to question the Aging and Services Division. I said, so you brought it up, which opens the door. I said, so what role does the Minnesota Board on Aging play in this executive order? And the comment that we got, and I shared this with both Joel and Gary, was that since this relationship has been in existence since 1980, it doesn't really apply. That was the answer that I got from the state. So I think there is some strength in that executive order that if they are truly like other state agencies, which are required to engage in meaningful consultation, then our services to our elders should be a priority, should be considered, and they should hear exactly what our level of concerns are. Because again, I can't say it enough how much, and I don't like to use the word different, but our relatives, our elders are a lot different from any other group of elders in this state of Minnesota. I mean, they're different from the ethnic background, the ethnic elders as well. And I constantly remind them, in fact, it was a couple of years ago, I said, will you please not use the word minority when you're talking about our American Indian elder population, because we are not minorities. So I think we have to, utilize those things such as the executive order, and remind, those individuals or those people, and they may not know, and that's what I'm thinking, that they may not know it. But if you're going to bring something up, as they did, you're going to open the door for questions from me, and if I can't get an answer, I start to wonder if they really do know about that. So anyway, thank you again, Madam President and Secretary Treasurer Roy.
George, with regards to Executive Order 1310, which deals with the tribal consultation, I did get a hold of Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan yesterday, and she said that because we know that it's going to end pretty soon, that they are going to be looking at it again and probably passing it, but what they said is they want to make sure that they include all agencies that are going to be part of the executive order, unlike the previous executive order, because there were some agencies that did not have that that weren't included in that executive order. But she also said that they want feedback from the tribes before they solidify it. So that's a very positive note from the governor's office, so I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Just, Madam President, one more comment.
Yes,
I just
Alan.
want to clarify, so when I say consultation and coordination, I'm saying it's at our level.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, I don't mean like the state or anything like
Yeah.
that. I mean, what are we doing to own that? So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve George's report?
I move.
Moved by Farron. Is there a second? Second by Marie. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried.
Next is Finance Corporation and Economic Development reports. Jeff, and I'll read those.
Okay, for the fourth quarter, a summary of the Economic Development and Business Development Center. The Business Development Center continues operation under a USDA Rural Business Development Grant through fiscal year 19. This grant allows the center to continue to provide small business services to our MCT tribal members. Finance Corporation also continues to administer a small business loan program for enrolled MCT tribal members. For 2018, there were 52 tribal members contacting the Center for Guidance and Assistance. Of that number, we completed 6 business plans and closed out 2 business loans. And we currently have 6 active clients. We also have a pending application with the Otto Bremer Foundation for additional funding. In addition, we have provided the fiscal year 16 administrative audit to the Chicago EDA and are awaiting an invite to apply for the Partnership Planning Grant for 2019. This particular grant provides each of our MCT tribal planning departments with funding assistance in economic development strategies and primarily assists with salary and travel expenses. Current plans are to conduct outreach site visits with reservations as the year progresses. We also have preliminary discussions with MnDOT on coordinating an employment and contracting event in northern Minnesota for the benefit of native-owned small businesses. And that's summary of the Business Development Center.
Any questions?
Questions?
I got a question. So you had 6 business plans developed, and you had 2 loans that were closed out. So that means that they paid their loan off? Is that what
No,
that
that means that we
Finance them?
financed 2,
So they were like opened up, so like,
yeah.
they were kind of opened up instead of closed
Correct.
out? Okay. And then that six active clients, did that stem from the 6 business plans that were developed?
No, that's just straight up tribal clients that I'm currently working with on it's normally looking for business loans to open up a business or assist with the purchase of an existing business. And I have 6 clients right now that I'm working with on doing that.
Okay, so some of these business plans and these business loans that were approved, were they around the Cass Lake area? Were they spread out through the other tribes or just?
No, they're spread out, and yesterday at the Finance Subcommittee, I provided kind of a summary. I included names and reservations where the businesses
Okay,
were located.
okay, I might have missed that.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
I'm not sure if I could do that here, but I do that Finance Subcommittee.
Okay, 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 all right, yeah,
Any other questions?
I don't.
Any other questions for Jeff? Do we have a motion to approve the economic development business report? Moved by Melanie, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Marie, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. Housing finance?
Okay, this is a summary for the home loan program for the last quarter. Closed 6 home loans during the quarter, 3 home purchases, 1 renovation, and 2 emergency loans. Also had 4 foreclosures during the quarter and sold 1 property, increasing the corporate inventory to 38 units. Also, through extensive effort from the staff, the delinquency rate has been reduced to its lowest rate in many years. We also worked with 5 new loan applicants during the quarter, completed fiscal year-end reports, both financial and administrative, and worked with auditors during their on-site visit in December. We also held 1 home buyer class in October that was attended by 13 tribal people. We are currently working with 7 approved home loan applicants in completing their loan packages. We're working on completing calendar year reports and information reporting to the IRS for contractor income, interest on loans, certificates of rent paid, and sales of real estate.
Okay.
And finally, we're doing continuous marketing, updating the website and showing properties for sale. That concludes the home loan program.
Any questions on the home loan? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve their quarterly report. Moved by Melanie, is there a second? Second by Marie, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, silent, motion carried. Education?
Bonjour, Ogemag, Cha'anakwadikwe, Indigenous Cause, Mayan Dodame, Gawabagani Kagandunjaba, Nikidokwa, Gabanuji, and so. I just have a few things to add to the written report. I wanted to talk just a little bit about that resolution that was passed this morning regarding the structure of the Office of Indian Education. Is this working? The reason that was brought forward is that ever since that it was reestablished, the Office of Indian Education was established, the director of the Office of Indian Ed reported directly to the commissioner, who was Commissioner Casilius at that time. And with the transition, maybe it's just because it's new right now, is that with the new commissioner, the current Education Indian Ed Director, Dr. Harstead, has been reporting to a deputy commissioner or assistant commissioner, and no disrespect to those people, but it should be a direct link to the commissioner as it was when it was reestablished. That was one thing that I wanted to bring up. The other thing is the identification of American Indian students. There's a bunch of things that are tied in with that, but it really is a mess. I mean, there's so many ways to identify. There's ways that we end up not being counted. That conversation really needs to be looked at, and at least, I mean, if it's not going to change, we need to know why numbers go so goofy at the state. Third thing I wanted to bring up was the NIA. NIA is going to be in National Indian Education Association conference is coming home. It's going to be the 50th anniversary, and it's going to be October, I believe it's the 9th through the 12th. Could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And since it started here, it began here, I think it'd be really good if we could have a good showing there. I know I'm missing something else. There was another thing that I wanted to. Oh yes, the science standards. Thank you.
Yep.
There's academic standards that are changed every 10 years or something like that. And one of the things that ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, includes, is that we have to have contributions of American Indians included in the standards. What that is not determined. During one of our conference calls, the academic director, academic advisor at the, I'm not sure what his title was, but he works with academic standards, had read kind of a statement of what that's going to be, or maybe. But there's an opportunity. The point I want to make is there's an opportunity to go online and take a survey, and the opportunity to put comments on that of what you think about what's written there, what it should be. One of the TNEC people that during the teleconference had mentioned that she was going to do was to contact her science teachers to take a look at that and add to that. So I just think it's really important to get our science teachers, if you know any, to take a look at that and provide some guidance and statements on there. And then that way, and then what we're going to do, TNEC is going to, Tribal Nation Education Committee is going to ask to see the results of that survey so we can, see what was offered and if it's going to be utilized, and it's just important. Last thing I want to say is that hearing about all these different things that happen, especially our coning our kids, and just to keep in mind, I know that a lot of educators at our meetings have talked about before is how about a state Department of Indian Education or Indigenous Education or an institute, I don't know what you would call it, but where we would take the reins and decide how we're going to count. We wouldn't have to go to the state to depend upon data, information, that kind of stuff. So, meet you.
Okay. Any questions for Billy? Not a call for a motion to approve the, Dale?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a question,
It's okay.
but I would ask the TEC to consider thinking about, information is powerful.
Yep.
And when you give up the ability to identify yourself to the state agencies, you're giving them permission to categorize and identify your members and your children and your grandchildren. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to offend people, but I'm not an American Indian. I'm not related to any of the descendants of Amerigo Vespucci, even though they may be very fine people. I've known some people from India, but I am just not related to anyone. I don't think there are probably any of us that know of any American Indians that are enrolled in the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. When we give up that power to self-identification, people can call us what they want, and we respond to that. Now, working with the state of Minnesota Indian Education Department, we're dealing with their funding. But change doesn't happen until you start mentioning, no, you're not going to identify us, we will tell you how we self-identify with. So it's just my personal pet peeve, to be called the American Indian. Amerigo Vespucci was a fine map maker. I kind of hope that he wasn't so good at it, and maybe we would be a little bit more better off. But be good.
Miigwech, Dale. Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
So, I was passed a note to ask about the northern position identified from Minnesota Department of Ed. We were talking about it a little bit yesterday, but I don't have much information on it. Billy, do you have any information on a northern position for the northern tier, or does Dr. Harstead have information?
Good afternoon. I wasn't thinking I was going to have to speak today, but
MDE is looking to hire a person in the northern, an American Indian person in the northern region, to work with the schools that were identified under ESSA as world's best workforce, identified schools that need improvement. So it's like the lowest 5% of the schools, and it happens that a lot of our schools that have high populations of American Indian students are on that list, so they were looking to hire someone in the northern region to help those schools with their improvement, not only their comprehensive needs assessment, but what programs might benefit those schools. At this point, they haven't done anything about the position yet. They're planning on hiring this summer, and I have been told that they would rather hire internally and would like to have someone who's already working in the regional centers of excellence take that position, who would not be American Indian.
That's what I was just gonna.
I don't know how it will turn out, but they are looking to hire one. I know that TNEC requested that they hire one for each of the regional centers of excellence, which would be 6 or 7. And MDE has replied that they would hire one.
The executive order that's been brought up and that is undergoing renewal, I guess, is
Yep.
vitally important, not
Yes.
just for defining how we're going to be consulted with as tribes, but it also outlines the importance of us being at the table for the hiring of these positions that work with our communities. So I just wanted to remind our elected officials of that. Miigwech.
Thank you, I agree with that. And I know that we're having a MIAC meeting next week also, and we'll bring that up at that point also, because I know with our tribal liaisons, the MIAC committee did say that we want input on those tribal liaisons, and they really do need to be tribal people. That's the way it needs to be, so. With that, if we could call for a motion to approve the education report. Oops, I'm sorry, Farron's got a question.
I just got a quick question, Billy. Under the education program activities, I see on January 31st to the 1st, you had a meeting at Walker?
That was canceled. We ended up doing 2 teleconferences. That's when it was really cold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
those were changed to teleconferences.
Because have they so you did have a conference call there then? Is that what happened, took place?
Yeah, the Minnesota Department of Ed, OIE, they hosted the call, and then so we just all called in.
Did anybody bring up the discussion about the school powwow that happens in April?
No, we didn't get that announcement.
Okay, because some of the LIEC members from the parent committee said Walker is not allowing the Native kids to have their school powwow at the school this year, and they didn't specifically give a reason for it. I don't know, so we had planned, so they wanted to move the school powwow over to the Onigum Community Center that day. So I thought that just struck me as being kind of odd, as we try to build relationships with the students and the staff, and you know how we, so that, I don't know if there's anything to that, but I haven't had a chance to kind of sit down or meet with anybody from the Walker School Board, and I know Lori has been kind of trying to working on getting a meeting set up too, so we can have that discussion, with the administration there to see what's what.
I think that anything that the Tribal Nation Education Committee as an entity can do to assist even at local levels, to let us know, and they would, there would be some representatives that would come and sit down and have any conversations like that. But I don't know if you want to add something about that. Lori, do you know anything about the powwow and that? Okay.
Okay, yeah, we just gotta have a little tighter communication all around from the
Yes.
LIC and staff and school administration, the Indian ed person over there to see what's what, it's just deal with the facts.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Which-
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Billy? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the education report. Moved by Marie, is there a second? second by Alan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, silent, motion carried. Michael, if you wouldn't mind, could we take a 10-minute break just to, so people can check out? But
I knew it.
but no, I mean, also,
That's fine.
no, also, just for everybody's information, it's really getting bad down towards White Earth with the snow, and they're closing offices, so, you know, I realize that we've got a lot of the agenda left, so if we could just remember that when we're meeting here, that we do have a lot of our people here that have a long ways to travel. So, short 10-minute break. Short. Say 5. Brian? Oh. See you later, Ray. Okay, Michael, we'll continue with your important report. It is important.
All right, miigwech. Bonjour, everybody. My name is Michael Northford. I'm the Environmental Program Manager for the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. During this quarter, I have maintained my grant administration functions and attended our quarterly state and tribal mining meetings, as well as our Minnesota Tribal Environmental Council meetings. And during this quarter, I coordinated conference calls between MCT bands and other Minnesota tribal nations. And this next section is the main one I want to emphasize, that we're going to be doing our next round of the 24-hour HAZ waste site worker training in partnership with the University of Minnesota. We have begun the planning phase. This time there will be 24 spaces. Last year there was 20 spaces, and we only had 10 band staff apply, so we really need to fill that up. So I need your guys' help, your authority for your bands and your band staff. And this would include anybody that comes in contact with household hazardous waste during the performance of their job duties, including but not limited to gaming, environment, natural resources, housing, health, tribal waste management, and basically any custodial janitorial staff from any department can attend this training to get some safety training. The purpose of this training is to facilitate proper training techniques and procedures for band staff safety, protection, and environment. And I should have added also for the protection and safety of your customers and people attending different functions at the tribal venues and things like that. This also saves the bands at least $1,200 per staff member in training costs, because I cover the cost of the training, the OSHA certified training that's put on by the University of Minnesota, as well as their lodging and some meals throughout the 3 days that you do the training. An RFP was sent out in January, and we received it at the beginning of February, and I can tell you guys that the venue that was chosen at random was Fond du Lac Black Bear, so that's where it will be held at, May 6th through the 10th. And MCT Environmental Program continues to be ready to assist in any household hazardous waste collection event for 2019. And in addition, assistance with disseminating community outreach education and awareness material to MCT members is available at the request of the bands and or their staff. So the main thing about that is that, you know, that I want to come away from this today is that, you know, this is something that I specialize in, is environmental capacity building for the bands and the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe as a whole, and that this is a safety capacity thing. One of the things that your staff have told me throughout my time here is that you know, these type of training opportunities need to be pursued by me in order to facilitate the capacity for you know, training your staff that need training, things like that. This one happens to be focused on their safety, so it's really important. Of course, the program continues to review developments and changes in regulations and management updates and pertinent issues. Any other topics can be pursued further at the request of the TEC, NREC, individual bands, and other staff. Lastly, the MCT Environmental Program was awarded and received the $50,000 in funding that we applied to, the BIA Circle of Flight grant. This will be used specifically to assist the Grand Portage Band in establishing standardized waterfowl and herpetale surveys in the 1854 ceded territory, with work being performed this year and next year. And as always, I continue to pursue additional funding opportunities, as well as conduct the necessary trainings pertinent to environmental protection and collaboration in partnership with both tribal and non-tribal entities. My current grant period ends in the end of September this year, and my next 2-year one will begin in October. And throughout that time and between now and then, I'll be working with the band staff as to what they want me and direct me to be doing in that next 2-year period. And then I just wanted to briefly mention something that was brought up at the NREC meeting yesterday, that at the previous TEC meeting, a resolution was tabled regarding the cultural land surveys in the Enbridge Line 3. I'm going to be working with staff to coordinate and update on that resolution. I'm sorry we didn't have answers for anybody yesterday, but I've been talking with people since then, and we want to try to hurry up and get this through because we're running out of time, and then it can't wait until that next quarterly meeting. So hopefully we can get it to you guys as soon as possible.
Sounds good, Michael, thank you.
Good.
Any questions for Michael? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve his EPA Gap Environmental Program report. Moved by Melanie.
Second.
Seconded by Farron. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have BIA Minnesota Agency, Patty Olby.
Good morning.
Good morning.
At the agency, well, first of all, I'd like to say we are so glad to be back to work after that shutdown. We were only authorized to work on mission-critical duties. We had one staff on board at the agency during the shutdown. That was me. Everybody else I got to send home, and they're all back right now. We have a backlog, of course, as you would imagine, trying to get through that. But I do want to clarify mission-critical duties. That was a confusion and topics of discussion while we were under shutdown. Our first priority was saving lives. So children, Indian child welfare issues, our social workers could have been called back. Property and saving property, fire, trust assets. So those types of things is the only thing that we could work on. So, but like I said, it's good to be back and fully operational. So, vacancies at the agency right now, we have a fire management officer. The selection has been made, but it's pending at HR. We're waiting for a start date for that. That used to be Greg Peterson, who had retired. Amy Hunt, our administrative officer, has been promoted and went to the regional office. So I'm without an administrative officer right now, flying solo because I lost my deputy a few years ago. So, and I won't fill that one because of budget constraints. So, administrative officer has been advertised, and it's pending at HR. I'm waiting for a certificate of eligibles for that.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll fill that one very soon. Budget. We've expended all of our carryover funding. I know many of you have submitted requests for projects for extra funding for carryover. Some we have funded, some we have not. With the ones that we have not funded, we have sent to central office requesting some of their funds, so there's still hope yet. We're working hard right now. It's our priority to push out the 1920 funding. So that is the region's top priority right now. Budget formulation, due to shutdown, the deadline has come and gone. It's still not too late. I believe we have 2 bands that have not submitted under MCT yet. There's still time. The due date now is pushed to March 1st.
Okay.
If anyone needs help with filling out that survey, just give me a call. I can walk you through it over the phone. The important thing is to submit something. There's going to be a WebEx call March 13th to go over the regional results of budget formulation. It's going to be at 10 o'clock. You should have received an invite for that call or will very soon. The agency is getting ready for buyback. The land buyback program is coming. We have been reconciling title, priority given to Fond du Lac and Bois Forte for this program. I want to offer real estate from the BIA to help with any outreach events. And our outreach is a little different than the buyback program's outreach, is that we give the landowners the full picture and not just what we're gonna pay you to buy. So what it means to be a landowner and how you've acquired in a lot of one-on-one. So we're
Good
willing
idea.
to do that. We hope to get on some calendars and get some dates scheduled. Currently, our workload in real estate services, we have 36 feet of trust cases pending. That's a lot. And when you consider we have 3 specialists, so, and all of leasing activity, rights of way, everything. So that's a lot, but we're doing okay.
Which counties?
All over the place. I have my real 2, I have all 3. Which counties?
How many do you have for Cass County?
Well, let's just see here. Leech Lake, you have 4 applications, but I'm not sure, I don't have the counties broken out, but you have 4 applications pending. Okay. And then for probate, of course, we're on quotas too for that program for our GEPRA goals. So probate, we are doing research on case prep, family research for 1,534 estates.
Wow.
So we have a staff of 6 working those. So we're quite busy. So, and of course the shutdown put us back, nothing moved. So we're really working hard to keep up and prioritize. So, any questions?
Any questions for Patty? Guess not. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Roger?
I will be very brief. I already spoke with Chairwoman Chavers and Secretary Ferdinand. The first one, Patty already talked about, June through August 2019, Fond du Lac Bois Forte will be participating in the land buyback program. We've been very active sending out letters to individuals that have land that are whereabouts unknown. We will continue to do that. You have to have a good address in our system to get an offer, which means you have to have your address current with us before we will be sending out offers to those individuals, primarily for Fond du Lac and Bois Forte. Tribal purchases at probate. Fond du Lac by far is leading the pack of the tribes here and are very active in purchases at probate and doing a very good job. I encourage any of the tribes that want to do purchase at probates. I can answer any questions or assist. White Earth, Terry, I do want to say you've gone through the process, but I've had 2 probates now that the tribe did not remit the funds to the court within the 30 days. And if you don't do that, you don't get that purchase approved, which means it's dispersed to the beneficiaries, and so you lose out on that.
I just found out about that yesterday, so
Okay,
I think it was a minimum amount of land.
it was. But I just want to encourage you, because there's a lot of effort that goes into these probates, and you put the offer in, you get the appraisal, and then if the money doesn't show up, they have 30 days to consummate the sale. So, just wanted to bring that up if you plan on doing it. The last one, we've already talked to Secretary Ferdinand and Chairwoman Chavers about the, sorry.
That's okay.
About the Ilka Recoup program. It was a long time coming, but I think we've got it straightened out.
Yep.
So,
Thank
that's
you,
all I have.
Roger.
Thank you.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Who does appraisals of the land?
The Office of the Special Trustee has an appraisal department, and it's done through our office. Are you for the land buyback or for the purchase of probate?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
So it's
Stu-
kinda like, it's a fair market value assessment then is what it is?
Yes, and that all has to be approved by the Office of Hearings and Appeals, it goes before a judge, and they look at the purchase price and the appraised value, and they'll consummate approval to buy, and then once the check comes in, it's approved and finalized.
Do you ever have any issues that come to surface about the appraisal of the actual land itself?
Me personally,
Yeah,
I have not, but
Or the value?
I haven't gone out and looked at any of the appraisals. I assume somebody's looking at it when it gets to the court, because the judge has to sign off on it and approve that sale.
Okay, I was just kinda curious, cause I know on Leech Lake we're having there's so much difference from the values from what one appraisal company will appraise land for, somebody else will appraise it here, and some of it entails lakeshore property, so there's just, it's like, you know, it's like, what is the fair value, or if there's that much indifference, where do they resolve, just how do they get it resolved?
Good question. I'm sure if there are issues on the probate, the beneficiaries are gonna be the recipients of that money. They could bring it up to the judge too, at that point. I guess if the tribe is purchasing it and they don't like the appraised value, they could raise it with the court also.
Yeah.
I've generally just read the orders after
Well,
they come up with a price, and then it goes
Okay, I
to the judge.
understand that. I mean, it's always been ongoing issues with land purchase from tribes. I mean, I know, I can't speak for the rest of the tribes, but with Cass County, when our areas that are, inside the reservation lines, when they find out that the tribe is looking to purchase small tracts or partials of land, and they find out the tribe's interested, then they.
Track it up.
Yeah, then the price goes up, you know, which we know that's been ongoing practice. I don't know if there's something that we have to talk with the governor or somebody where we could get more of an actual fair market value assessment of the land, and not find out, you know, it's gonna differentiate, it's gonna jack up thousands of dollars when they know the tribe's interested in it.
Well, what I can do, you're really close to our office. I'd be very happy to come over and work with your realty department. I work with Joel Smith, he's not very far away either. And we could send up your concerns to the appraisal department at OST. I'll be happy to do that for you.
Sure, appreciate that.
Okay,
So
good.
I will make a point to call your realty department when I get back tomorrow, and maybe we can set something up.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairwoman Chivers.
Chavers. That's okay. That's okay, Roger, that's okay. Been called worse. Okay, thank you, Roger. Next, we have the Tribal State Relations Bill. Melanie.
Thank you. The Executive Order 1310, we passed out a copy to everyone here, and it's also, it's got some red lines through it as well. I think just a little history, that about 6 years ago, Linda Aiken and Tad Johnson started that training with the state employees. So it's been kind of a really beneficial training for the state employees. And so you talked earlier about the governor doing a new executive order. And so there's just been some recommendations and how we can improve that executive order. And one of the things that that some are talking about is actually getting this into law, so we can really get it firmed up for us. And so when this executive order is presented again from the current governor's office, I think that we should move forward in terms of making sure that we get it passed into law and start working on that. It's basically kind of what the discussion will be, so hopefully we get support. And then I don't know if we need a motion now or when, depending on when that executive order is signed, to then move the next step to get a bill introduced to make this part of the Minnesota state law.
We could do a motion today to pursue.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, I'll move for that.
Motion made by Melanie to pursue, once Executive Order 1310 is reestablished with tribal consultation, to pursue making this into law as the next step. Melanie made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave?
Yep.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Silent? Motion carried. Good
I'm
job.
thinking once that executive order comes out, we can
Yep.
do a further resolution.
Yep.
Seeking codification to also.
Okay.
With our specific language proposals.
Thank you, Phil. You're up, Phil.
All right, I'll keep this brief. The first item previously discussed in the resolutions was supporting the Indian Programs Advanced Appropriations Act. I drafted some language. The resolution has already been approved, but here
Yep.
I'd like to read the language
Okay.
into the record. Whereas the United States has a government-to-government relationship with the Minnesota Chippewa tribe in each of the 6 bands that is premised on treaty making and the federal trust obligation. And whereas the federal trust obligation requires the federal government to provide for the health and welfare of tribal nations, and whereas in recent years federal appropriation bills have not been enacted in a timely manner, resulting in partial government shutdowns, which has caused significant hardships for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe and the 6 constituent bands. And whereas advanced appropriations represents an important budgetary solution to this failure to uphold the federal trust responsibility, and do not require congressional appropriations committees to count advanced appropriations against their spending cap. And whereas the Minnesota Chippewa tribe believes that moving to the advanced appropriations process would protect our governments and their direct service units from cash flow problems that regularly occur due to delays in the enactment of appropriations legislation. And whereas the Indian Program Advanced Appropriations Act is currently pending before Congress and would provide advanced appropriation authority for certain accounts of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Indian Education, and the Indian Health Services departments. And now therefore be it resolved that the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Tribal Executive Committee supports the Indian Programs Advanced Appropriations Act and urges Congress to enact the legislation into law. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be the policy of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe until it is withdrawn or modified by subsequent resolution.
Very good, Phil. Thank you. Miigwech.
Yep. 2 quick cases I'd like to touch on that we've already discussed in committee as well as here. The first is the ICWA Supreme Court case. The oral arguments on that will be March 13th in New Orleans. That's currently pending before the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals, titled Brackeen v. Texas. Upon authorization from you, we signed on to an amicus brief drafted by the NCAI and NARF Tribal Supreme Court Project as the Minnesota Chippewa tribe in that case. I'll provide an update once those arguments take place and a decision is rendered. The second case is a treaty rights case, which I discussed in the Environmental Natural Resources Subcommittee. It's titled Herrera v. Wyoming. That's one to keep an eye on with regard to treaty rights. That's at the Supreme Court. I know that Fond du Lac as well as Mille Lacs joined amicus briefs drafted by NCAI in that one as well. Finally, discussion on the election ordinance. I think last year when the previous election cycle, we got an ad hoc committee together to discuss proposed amendments to the election ordinance. We should look at doing that again this year, well in advance of the elections coming up. So one thing we did, I think we had each band had sent certain people or appointed certain people to that ad hoc committee to get together and iron out the problems and issues that we want to see addressed in amendments to the election ordinance. We would be looking at doing that. I think as a matter of practice, we should look at having good concrete recommendations to the TC at the October regular meeting. And this kind of dovetails into the discussion with the Grand Portage special election will be likely taking place in July. If the election is appealed, it'll likely be not until August where somebody is seated. So that's kind of a short-term turnaround from August until October, but I think we can get it done. It may call for some really quick appointments, so start thinking about who each band wants to appoint to that to sit and develop recommendations.
And as far as those appointments, last year, I think a few of the bands never appointed till right before we had the meeting. We got to the meeting and, some of the reps got there and they didn't even know, any idea what they were supposed to be doing. They never got together with the councils or with their election
Okay.
boards and had any issues with the election ordinance. So that's why we're doing it far enough in advance right now. Maybe by the next quarterly meeting, we'll definitely have that group in place. Think about who you want to nominate. It might be a legal counsel or someone on your election boards as opposed to just somebody representing you as an ad hoc that's not familiar with the election process.
All right. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I gotta, okay. That's a good idea there, Phil. I think that the councils, representing MCT, I know they're required to enforce the election process and, the requirements. But, sometimes, that doesn't happen, and sometimes there doesn't seem to be no recourse of action for the candidates. I'll put an example out there, during that election in 2016, during the certification process, which all the candidates were in attendance with, as well as a full council, there was an individual candidate, when he was asked about if he'd been a resident of the reservation for a year, he replied, "No, I haven't." But yet, through the majority of the council, he was still certified. And, so that's kind of to me, that's a violation of the Constitution itself. We just wanna make sure that, things like that don't always come up and resurface after there's another election, whether there's a felony issue that was brought up, and then it was resolved, through appellate court system, and yet it's like it's brought up again, so we don't really wanna see our election process on Leech Lake tainted that way. We just wanted to make sure that it's followed according to the Constitution, and if somebody openly when he's getting certified as a candidate, openly admits he hasn't been a resident of the reservation for 1 year, so he shouldn't be certified, but a lot of the times it's kind of pushed back to like, well, that might be just a Leech Lake issue to resolve. Either we're gonna be in on this MCT all the way, or we're all in, or else, otherwise it doesn't have no strength to it.
Uniformed.
Yeah, so that's, it's good that we have these discussions like that and put it on the table, because I think all reservations, I know Leech Lake, we wanna have a fair reservation, election process that's followed, in accordance with the MCT requirements.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and the majority of the disputes last time related around that certification part. So as individual band RBCs, really take a look at those when you're developing recommendations to send forward with whoever serves on this ad hoc committee. Look at the places where we've had trouble in the past, whether it be certification issues, things like that. So really look at those with a critical eye on the language in the election ordinance and where we can make changes, definitely.
Well, it's pretty black and white, and it's just, there's gotta be, as we hold each other accountable for our actions, that there's gotta be consequences to these violations as well. And if it doesn't come from that specific reservation itself, it should come from this TEC body. Because like I stated earlier, I believe we're all in this together.
Or the TEC body should be able to override it if they're not following the requirements in the Constitution,
Right, when they're just blatantly violated that, in that way, and
MCT
at a
should
public
override
meeting, when minutes are taken, and it's not hearsay, it's kind of factual meetings that took place, and then there was violations that were made, and that's not wrong to any candidate or anybody seeking office. And if somebody's been cleared of a violations numerous times, it shouldn't be able to be brought up and you know, appealed or contested, or, and if, you know, dragging everybody through the mud, again, at an expense that the tribe has to
Yeah.
cover, or the MCT has to cover,
It's
you know,
true.
resulting in thousands of dollars. If they're gonna pursue things in that way, then that individual should be responsible for the cost that's incurred. And that should be put in a resolution so everybody understands that. That doesn't deny them the right to do it, but if their case goes through the whole process and it's not overturned, then you're gonna be responsible for that bill, whether it's $10, $12, $15,000 that has to be spent.
Good points.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does cost a lot of money.
Yeah, they do cost quite a bit. Okay. Alan?
Yes, ma'am. So I just want to verify that, how many folks can we appoint to that committee?
The last time we had the ad hoc committee, it was just one person from each reservation, but I think that was enough. I think you should have someone, if you have an ad hoc community member, you should also have somebody that's familiar with the process, whether it be your attorney or someone from the election board. So I would say at least a couple. Maybe we'll come up with something and within the next quarter, prior to the next quarterly meeting,
Okay.
we'll send something out.
Okay, sounds good.
And then,
ahead.
so they would come forward with recommendations, and we would consider that at this table then?
Correct.
Okay.
Kathy and I talked briefly yesterday. We talked about getting the officers together more frequently. We used to do that quite often. Just have the officers get together and discuss issues prior to the quarterly meetings. And she talked about maybe starting that up again, getting the officers together. This is something that we can bring up there.
When I was elected as president, I believe in a team effort, and that's why I talked to Gary and Farron and Dave and April about going to meet with Patty at the BIA office, and then also maybe meeting monthly or quarterly or whatever, just so we can be educated on the MCT also, the budgets and everything else, because in the event something happens to any one of us, you know, it would be nice to know where we were at as a whole with regards to the MCT. So that's the process we're gonna take. Thank you, Phil. Gary, we have update constitutional reform.
Okay, basically, I just put it in that package, the minutes of the meeting. Is there anybody from the delegates that wanted to speak shortly?
Sidra Whiteman, Sidra Bodo, Starkovich. I went through all three names. Sorry, Sidra. I'm sorry, Sidra. Maiden name.
Twice. Come on.
I know. My apologies.
That's okay. Make me sound like Erica Kane.
For those of us that watched All My Children.
So we met last week as the MCT delegate group, and there were a few topics that I was asked to bring up here at the TEC meeting. One was a letter that was written to Gary Frazier by the Mct Land Band requesting a resolution on behalf of the TEC. The resolution, the topics in the resolution that were requested were that an ordinance or a resolution or ordinance stating the following: that the TEC called for the Constitutional Convention in the first place, that that they directed the band governing bodies to select their delegates, and to recognize the delegates in the band governing bodies or the committees that were selected. So I think that some of the delegate groups are facing difficulties in being recognized by their tribes as delegate groups. So we feel that there might be a little more meat behind our delegate groups if we're recognized by the TEC in this way. So I do have copies of this letter that was sent to the MCT from Mille Lacs.
It's actually in the packet.
Oh.
Oh. It's in the packets, excellent.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
We took yours apart. Okay.
Okay, next I have, we have some questions, some general questions. We're kind of put together as a delegate group without any guidelines. And it's taken us since about November to kind of get our bearings and kind of start moving forward. We have some questions. One of them is, who is going to establish our guidelines for how we operate? We don't have any operating guidelines. And we're not exactly sure if we are the ones who should be setting those guidelines or if the TEC should be setting those guidelines for our operations. Right now, we're operating kind of by ourselves, would you not say? Those of you who are here, we're kind of developing things as we go. And we're not exactly sure if that's what we should be doing. We do know that we do have to be operating separate from the tribal governments or tribal councils. And so we know that that's important, but we're not sure if we should have other guidelines that we should operate under. Next, we have a question. We have not yet received any concrete financial support from MCT. At our meeting in February, or in November at Fond du Lac, it was stated that we would be receiving financial support, but we have not yet received anything concrete.
I got a question. You know, on Leech Lake, we recognize our delegation committee. You know, there's no doubt about that. You know, and as far as the approach that they wanted us to take, where tribal councils were kind of hands off. Now, you know, when people we talk to in our communities, you know, they want the council to kind of be involved, more or less, just as a band member, not as a council member, because we've been all addressing this issue together, you know, for years, and then to have the council kind of stay out of the room, so to speak, you know, a lot of the elders are saying, we don't think that's the right way to handle that, you know, that so if you want a council member want to come to the meetings, the delegation meetings, and kind of put a comment or an opinion out there, I mean, that should be your right as well. So, you know, so it's kind of changed up a little bit, you know, and I know a lot of the issues that they wanted to kind of discuss was to kind of educate everybody on the current constitution and go through it and, you know, and bring some recommendations back to the membership, to the TEC on, you know, on what's working and what might not be working today, you know, and so I don't believe they wanted to make it, we didn't want to overanalyze it or make anything real extremely complicated. You know, because I know Dale and Wally have been involved with it for many, many, many years, you know, and there's a lot of ways we can approach it in little bits and pieces, and you know, but you know, to overanalyze things and make it real complex, sometimes that kind of stagnates everything.
Yes, and that's kind of what we came to the realization at this last meeting was. It's kind of an aha moment where we said, you know what, I think we've kind of attacked this as a big giant document, and instead we've decided to break it down. But it's kind of taken us this long to get to that point, and we have had a lot of really good input from Dale and Wally. They kind of sit back and advise us in really helpful and wise manners. But I do agree with what you're saying as far as the council coming in as band members. Just because you're council members doesn't mean that your voice doesn't matter. I think that it's just important, though, that that we see it that way and that it remains that way, that it's not you coming in as council and coming even to the delegate meetings and being as a council person and as the tribal council leading the delegate group, but that you're coming to the meetings for input. And I'll bring all of this information back to the delegate group as well when we meet next. So we do need to find out what our concrete financial support from MCT is going to be. We have developed a budget and financial committee, so we are working off of the budget that we were given back in November at Fond du Lac. but there's really no money there.
Okay.
We would also like to ask that the TEC as a board recommend to the tribes that they do provide financial support for the delegate members and or reimbursement. We do have a lot of delegate members who, we have a lot of tribes who are very willingly supporting the delegates and paying for their rooms, reimbursing for rooms. But I know that in conversation at the last meeting, there's a lot of our delegates who are funding their own travel and their own rooms and things. So we think that if the TEC kind of recommends to the tribes that this is an important undertaking, and that it is important that we reimburse those delegates for their travel or pay for their travel and time. We also would like to ask that the TEC recommend or encourage administrative leave approvals by each band for employees that are serving on the delegate boards. Some tribes are doing it, some tribes are not. It makes it a little difficult for, it's a difficulty for those who are not employees of the band, they have to take leave, but for the employees of the band, we at the delegate group were in agreement that it would be beneficial to receive administrative leave approval for that. And then finally, again with the budget, receive current support that the current budget is as written and is as received as back in November.
Okay, you've asked, I've got 6 questions. With regards to the operating guidelines, and I believe that, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is to be member-driven. And so I would think that the group itself should develop their own operating guidelines, because my understanding is that the TEC should not be involved, or the tribal leaders should not be involved as tribal leaders, and that that would be up to this group to develop their own operating guidelines. Correct? How they're gonna, go ahead, Melanie.
The only comment that I would make that that just talking to a couple of our delegates, they're okay with doing that, and they'll take on that task. But the issue with our delegates is that what is their
Purpose?
Their purpose, and what are they really moving toward? Because there is not specific direction in their opinion, and if they could get something more specific, then they would be willing to move forward on that. And because there's a lot of issues that need to be discussed in the Constitution, so I know that that's what's kind of holding them up in a sense.
Okay.
If they could get what their purpose is going to be, and that, and then they could move forward, and they have no problems with writing the guidelines or any of those types of things that need to be done, but they just want to make sure that they don't move into writing guidelines and then someone says, oh no, that's not really what you're supposed to do. So it's just more clear communication on their behalf.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the underlying purpose is to create or develop or draft a proposal that would be submitted to the TEC related to constitutional amendments, right? But how they get to that point will require stages in terms of, well, how do we even, first of all, how do we approve things? Secondly, how do we create or draft these things? Those are kind of things that will happen along the way, but I think the underlying goal is to provide a proposal to the TEC.
The underlying goal, like Phil said, is to bring a document before the TEC in the future, and the initial goal is to educate the MCT members on what the Constitution is, and how do we, like, how will Bois Forte educate Bois Forte band members on what the Constitution is? Because when we had our outreach meetings for the Constitution reform, as an example, we had a meeting in Minneapolis, and I don't even think we got 50 people. And, you know, how do we provide that outreach and education to each tribe's members to get them involved with what knowing what the Constitution is, because we feel there's a lot of people out there that don't know what it is. And so, but the end result would be a document for that. I would like to throw out a person you could call, and that's Tom Kane at Red Lake. Red Lake has done 4 years of constitutional reform, and that's educating their band members. How did they do it? They're now coming, after 4 years, they're coming to a written document. They're close to a written document right now. But Tom has been very helpful and is willing to answer any questions. They've kind of gone through the process themselves, so maybe that might be helpful to the committee, using him as a resource rather than reinventing the wheel. I know he said it's lots of meetings, plus they also did they got a lot of grant funding. But I think that was the intent. That's your next question, is with regards to the concrete financial support. I believe yesterday that $60,000 was transferred into the Constitution reform budget right now, but I know that once we started this process that we were going to also look at different grant funding with regards to this process. I think it was like the Bush Foundation or
First Nations.
First Nations, yep.
Yeah, our Budget and Finance Committee has kind of talked about some different,
Okay.
Some different potential grant foundations that could help with not infrastructure, but startup and building community and that kind of stuff.
Because
Who's gonna write the grants then?
Gary, is that something that the MCT can do, is do the grant process?
Yes, maybe they could be in contact with Joe also.
Okay.
Joe can assist them on it. Yesterday, we did get, said there's 60,000 put into there, but that is going to, that budget was just to cover the
Yep.
expenses at each meeting. The hotel, the lunches, the coffee, cleanup copies, things like that.
Okay, so that wasn't necessarily to reimburse for hotel rooms or mileage or
To cover the
stipends.
costs? Because
So
there
those
wasn't.
will come from the individual tribes then?
As of right now, we have nothing concrete. We will look at initial fund, but as of right now, the MCT only had the 60,000 for that.
Okay.
So, I know this is gonna be kind of a lengthy process to get it done right.
Correct.
We understand that, and we know that it entails a lot, but you have a lot of intelligent people that've been working on this for years. You know, and I know Red Lake's in their 4th year, maybe going in their 5th year, and they're just revising a constitution just for one tribe. So we've got 6 years, so I hope it don't take us 10, 15 years to get something done, you know, I mean, but we wanna, at the same time, we wanna get it done right, so once we kinda really get in full motion with here, if we can set some realistic timeframes and when we can have a draft presented, is it gonna be a year, 18 months, or how long is it gonna take to present a draft, you know, a first option? And then even to go further than that, you know, maybe to even have 3 draft options on proposed changes. So it doesn't just, it's not one size fits all.
That's kind of what we discussed at the meeting, is breaking it down by article, preamble, article, Article 1. Take Article 1 from this meeting, and then next month, then we bring it back to our tribes, have the community meetings on that, break it down, and then bring it back to the next meeting, and then the group works on the draft with all the recommendations from our working groups with our tribes. We also figured that breaking it down into articles to do the education on it is also probably a little bit easier than, because people don't learn, in a straight line. We have to kind of learn as we go, and we're all gonna be learning together as well.
Just don't let Dale and Wally make it too complex.
No, we just want them to write it for us. He's got it all done.
I note, also you mentioned, Sidra, that to recommend to the tribes to help offset the costs for some of the reimbursement for travel and rooms and whatever. And I know what we can do is, strongly encourage the tribes to do that. Also with the administrative leave, I think each band could take that back to their respective tribal councils and get this settled. I know, like at Bois Forte, we've been doing the reimbursement for travel and rooms. So, but we'll look at the leave also. Go ahead, Alan.
Madam President, White Earth has passed a delegate resolution along with a budget, and we've passed a resolution, we call it a public service resolution.
Oh, okay.
That details the administrative leave to support this activity. And I will send it to Gary to distribute to the rest of the bands. It just kind of, it's really straightforward. I know in White Earth we have a provision in our policies that allows our employees to utilize up to 4 hours of professional development. And so above and beyond that, what we've said in our resolution is that if you are designated as a constitutional reform delegate, you can use unpaid leave to go and perform this duty and this function. So it's above and beyond that 4 hour window.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can go out and perform that duty. And so, but with business in mind, so there's language in there that you have to work with your supervisor to figure out a good schedule and to make up all that stuff. So we're happy to send that over to you guys, and it's something we've worked hard on. So.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Alan. Oh, go ahead, Farron.
When is the next scheduled convention meeting?
I think it's the 22nd of March, and that's going to be at Northern Lights Casino.
Oh, okay.
So that includes all the committee members then?
Mm-hmm. Yep, each tribe, all 6 tribes.
So totally, how many delegates do we have all together?
It's about 10 from each tribe.
Okay.
Some have a little more. We have, Bois Forte has 10 with 4 alternates. We try to have all 14 of us come to each meeting. It doesn't always work out that way. I know some of the other tribes have, up to 14, 16 people, but it averages to be about 60, 70 people at each meeting.
That's
and then we
good.
also have, there's also people in the audience that come who are band members.
Good.
And provide input as well.
So is it just a one-day meeting?
Correct.
One-day meeting.
Yep, usually goes 10 to 4.
10 to 4?
Yep. And then the host tribe has a facilitator that facilitates the meeting, each meeting. Okay. Any other questions?
Sidra, I know that the group that's been working with Constitution Reform, John Moran and them, they have offered their services to the group also, and they do have some funding possibly, or help with any type of assistance you would like. So I would contact that group. I believe he left. The gentleman in the front here, but he did say that they are willing to do some assistance with your process.
Thank you.
I hope we answered your questions as best we could.
Yes. Yep, and I think that I'll bring all this information back, and hopefully by that next meeting, each of our tribes will have a little more concrete information about their individual tribes' financial support and administrative leave.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Miigwech, Sidra. Sidra, one last question that Farron asked. Have you heard anything from Native Nations Institute?
Oh, no. No, but they were one of those
Okay.
nation builders that we talked about
Okay.
for grant money.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing.
Oh.
Oh. Jane was at our last meeting taking notes, and that was one request that we had, was that at each meeting that there was someone from MCT who could take official notes. So we'd like to request that officially as well.
And then she'll get all the notes out to the delegates, so we get them, she gets them done, and we'll get them to the full TEC.
Okay, if we can make sure that she knows the correct time and date and place, then
Okay.
I have one more question. Is there, do we have that established like on a web page or a link where community members that might not be able to attend a meeting could put a suggestion or a comment where it could be viewed?
We do have one of our delegate members is really, really good with technology, and he's putting together a web page that he's going to present at the next meeting for approval.
Nice.
So there will be a web page, MCT Constitution Reform web page, that will be hopefully going live after the next meeting. And that will have contact information for all of the delegates. It will have information about the individual community meetings. We also we've got Niji Radio coming to each one of our meetings and is broadcasting live. At our last meeting, we also had KBFT Radio that broadcasted live. And we're trying to make sure that it's on YouTube, or
Nice.
not YouTube, Facebook Live, that somebody's broadcasting live on Facebook. If we could get it on YouTube, that would be fantastic, but we haven't really arranged that quite yet. But as far as a website, there is going to be a website.
wonderful.
Yep.
Way to use
And
technology.
he's doing that free of charge. It's a free website.
Nice.
Yeah. Where will what? Where will MCT post the minutes? Those minutes we will post on that website. For right now, we have a Facebook page, an MCT delegate Facebook page. Let me see if I can find that address. So for now, that's kind of how we're communicating. Yeah, we'll probably have to do that. I'll talk to Jane about that. The Facebook page is MCT Constitutional Reform Delegates and Members. It is a closed group, but if you're a member, you can invite people to it. So it's going to be kind of so if you know of people and you're a member of that group, please invite people and let's make a chain of a big giant group. Okay? Yes.
Well, I'm Maggie from KKWE, and we are recording these. So we would like, if we could get the contact information, so that we can put the audio from the delegate meetings up on the website. So.
Okay. We did collect at the last meeting updated contact information, because I think the contact information that Jane had from the initial group was outdated. So we do have brand new contact information that will get to Jane and also will be on the website.
Good. Good.
And I'll get that to you.
Good job to your group. Thank you, Sidra. New business? Gary? He's got to put his glasses on.
Yeah. No new business, everything else got moved up to resolutions.
Yep.
I don't have anything. Just information if we're ready for that.
Okay.
Gare, is there, this on or?
Yeah, it's on.
I was wondering maybe if we could think about maybe renaming the Chippewa tribal offices over at Cass Lake, maybe after Norman. If that, you guys think about that, and maybe we could act on it at next at the next regular meeting.
Sure.
Sure.
Good idea.
Good idea, Dave.
Okay, under information, in the back of your packets, we have an invite from Grand Council Treaty Number 3 in Canada for August 13th through the 16th. It's a Anishinaabe Nation gathering in Manitoba, and they're asking all tribal tribes to attend if they could. So work on your passports.
Yeah.
The J Treaty should work, right, with tribal IDs?
It'll get you over there, see if you get back.
See if I get back, huh? Well, in the 90s it worked.
I know. It's traveling as a group, I know we all know that.
Okay. Yeah, I went there a few times through Thunder Bay and then through north here.
Oh, okay,
Okay, so that's in the back there. Then the other thing is the Mass Impact Week. Reminder, March 5th through the 8th at the Holiday Inn Capitol in Washington, D.C. And those of you attending, maybe we would have, I think Phil will probably have
it's a federal law.
the bill and everything put together for land transfer. Maybe we can carry that while we're down there.
Okay. Okay, Melanie?
I just wanted to invite the tribal leaders and other financial folks to NOFOA. That's going to be April 14th through the 16th in Portland, Oregon. And Kathy has been invited to participate in one of the panels, so I hope she can make that. And if others can attend, I just wanted to say that it's really probably one of the best training conferences to discuss tribal finance and financial responsibility for tribes and investments and all of those different financial management responsibility that tribal elected officials have. So I would urge if you can attend to please do so. NOFOA.
Can you send out the contact information for that,
I
Melanie?
will, yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
We better go
No other business?
to Treasurer Peter.
Call for a motion to adjourn? Moved by Melanie. Is there a second? Second by Farron. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, silent, motion carried. Safe travels to everybody going home. Please be careful. Very careful. Miigwech.
Go get your kids ready, huh?